my name is Mildly Gothic. If you're returning, hi, welcome back. If you're new here, what I like to do is a variety of artsy things, and if you can't tell, we have a different setup behind me. It's very sort of themed, plus my usual little gremlin friends. I made both of those plushies. I have videos on those. First things first, if you're my mother and you're watching this before Christmas, leave. You may have already spoiled some things based on the thumbnail and or title of this video, but to avoid any future spoilers, Mom, I love you. If this is before Christmas in 2024, please leave this video. Okay, hopefully my mother listened to me and is gone. If not, welcome to the spoiling of your Christmas present that hopefully has not already been too spoiled based on the thumbnail and title of this video, which I'm not sure what they'll be yet, but we'll figure it out. The main thing we're doing in this video is making a little crochet Christmas tree. I should have had it in my hand to show off, but I don't, and that's fine. I will insert either a picture or, we'll get to it. There's a possibility I try to throw in some other Christmas crafts in this video, just depending on how timing works out. Probably not, but I might, because I really want to make stockings for the cats, for our cats and our dog, and just have like all these little critters have their stocking. And I might make one for, my boyfriend has a snake named Kevin, and I kind of want to make his stocking just a really skinny, long tube. For some reason, that's really funny to me. I don't know if it's funny to anybody else. But what we are doing today is making an adorable little crochet Christmas tree. This was absolutely inspired by a post I saw on Reddit. This person was unhappy with this result of their tree, and they used squares, and someone in the comments linked a picture of this granny star pattern. And I thought that looked really cool, and so I took that star pattern and basically came up with the tree. I think it's one of the cutest little Christmas presents that I've ever made, and I think I'm definitely gonna be making myself a few to just have because they're so small and they're so cute, and you can color them and style them to any theme or vibe of Christmas that you want. Do you like a multicolored Christmas of snow, like white Christmas, a blue Christmas, a green Christmas? Whatever you want, you can make it your own. I hope if you're looking for last minute Christmas ideas, genuinely, I did this in a weekend. Like one full day, start to finish, you can make this present. So if you know how to crochet and you are desperate for last minute Christmas ideas, I got you. And with all of that said, let's get to the project. So to make this tree, you need a total of 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 pieces. And there's 2 of each one, and correct, these are not blocked, and that's because I think I like the droopy on the side. I think it kind of gives it a different character. It makes it a more consistent triangle, and it also just is kind of a cuter shape overall. But all of these are based on, I'll put the typical granny square star pattern on screen, and only one of those is exactly the typical granny square star, and that's these guys right here. The rest of these I kind of MacGyvered from that pattern to make larger and smaller ones. And yes, this is a star. It's got 5 points, at least it's supposed to. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They're in there. It just kind of looks like a ball. So I'll show you how to make this without the fuzz. It's basically really simple. But when you do it in this yarn, like I chose to, it just looks like a fuzz ball. So this is a very, very simple project. I crocheted all of these basically just one morning. None of these take super long. And so I'll show you how to do it. As far as colors go, you could make these all the same color. You could alternate colors like I did. You could just use 2 colors. You could use a different color for every single one. That is up to you. I did it this way so that when you stack them, it kind of looks like you get little snow-covered bits. So, going for the blue Christmas vibe. So, because I think that looks like a nice, cute little snow-covered tree right there. So, we will get to stacking and construction of it later, but first, time for a tutorial on 6 different patterns. So I'm going to use this light yarn because I think it is the easiest to kind of see what's going on. And all of these stars start with a magic loop. So if you've never done a magic loop before, they're pretty easy. You just need to keep track of your tail and your working yarn. The yarn that is connected to your skein is always your working yarn. So you're going to hold your tail with your thumb and then wrap it over your fingers. You can kind of do this with 2 or 3 fingers. I typically do 2 fingers because I find it easier. And then you're gonna hold it with your outside finger. And so what you want is this cross right here. So my tail is here and my working yarn gets wrapped around and taken as a cross. What you're gonna do is you're gonna take your hook, and I'm using a 5mm hook for this yarn. I don't know what weight this yarn is. I got it at a, basically like a yard sale. So you're gonna go under the loop that is connected to your tail. So this is my tail, and you're going to hook your working yarn and pull it through. So we'll do that one more time. So holding your tail, wrapping it around and going across, and you're gonna go under your tail, hook your working yarn and pull it through. And from here, you're going to chain 3, 2, and you can take your fingers out, 3. And so now, we're gonna start our granny pattern. The next kind of bit is personal preference. Some people prefer this starting chain to end up in the middle of their granny square. Others prefer it to be at the end. I'm one of the people who prefers it to be at the end. Don't ask me why, I just do. So how we're gonna do that is now we're going to double crochet 2 to start. And so you can kind of stick your finger in this loop to hold it. So we're going to double crochet 2. After your 2 initial double crochet, you are going to chain 3. And then you are going to make a granny cluster. And you are going to repeat this 4 times, because we need 4 more granny clusters and little chain sets. So there's a granny cluster, 1, 2, 3. And I'm going to do that and then show you how to join. All right, so here we go. So I have my 5 clusters, including my original one. And so we're gonna pull this. You don't want it to be too tight because you do actually still want room for a post to go through the center. That's what you're gonna stack your tree on at the end. So we have our 3, and so we are going to find that very top loop of our chain 3, and we're gonna go through that, and we're going to slip stitch in there. And so now we have our first round. This second round is basically going to set up the foundation for doing a hexagon granny square. So or a pentagon, sorry, excuse me, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yes. So if you did one more cluster, if you've ever seen people make those hexagon sweaters, they start in the round with 6 granny clusters and just kind of go from there. So super similar process. So what we're going to do is we are going to chain 1, well, actually go ahead and chain your 3, and we're gonna turn our work and we're gonna be going this way now. And so very first thing, into the chain space, you're going to go ahead and do 2 double crochets, and then you're gonna chain 1, 2, 3, and you're gonna go ahead and do 3 more double crochets into that same chain 3 space. And so this is your corner. And so now to bridge the gap, you're going to chain 1 and do 3 double crochets, so a granny cluster into this space. So once you have your 3, 1, 2, 3 chains, making your corner, and continue. You're gonna do granny cluster, chain 1, granny cluster, chain 3, granny cluster, chain 1, granny cluster, chain 3, and kind of go around. You chain 1 on your sides and 3 on your corner. And so again, you're gonna go all the way around until you get back to your first one. So again, once you're ready to join, so you have your chain 1 there, and you're going to slip stitch into the top of the chain 3 from the previous round. Eventually, if the yarn cooperates. All right, and so from here, we're actually going to keep working
how did I do it? So here's kind of the fun of making your own pattern. You can kind of do it a bunch of different ways. So let's stick consistent. Let's chain one and turn. But here, you're not actually going to do anything except directly start doing a granny cluster in the nearest corner. Once you have your corner done, what's next is you're going to just slip stitch into this chain one space. So you haven't made any chains, you've just slip stitched into the space, and you're going to immediately do a granny cluster in your next corner. And what you're doing is, notice you've forced a little V. And so you're going to do your granny cluster, you're going to chain your 3 and do another granny cluster. So these stars, you know, not all of them are the most pointy. You can probably change that if you wanted to do like a peacoat, whatever they're called. There's a type of stitch you can do to probably get nice little points at the top of these if you really wanted. There's a lot of different things you can do, but at a minimum, you just kind of need something kind of pointy. So we're gonna slip stitch into our chain one space and keep going. So when you get all the way back around to the other side, you are just going to slip stitch to join right in essentially there-ish, kind of where you started the round. You're just trying to make it disappear somewhere in there, whatever gets you the nicest V you possibly can. It's a little weird, it's a little hard, but it's on the inside, you know, kind of blip of the star, so it's not super visible, so it's not really a big deal. So just keep going all the way around. So I am back around to my beginning, and so I am going to go right here and go ahead and do a slip stitch, and then I like to do a chain one to finish, cut my yarn, and be done. And so, yes, it's a little blobby. It's not super pointy. However, I like this look because, again, I think it drapes really nicely. If you wanted it to be more star pointy and flat, you just block it, which the process is you get this wet. You don't want it sopping wet. You basically just want it damp. And blocking boards are as simple as, if you remember those like foam puzzle tile mats that like gym floors have sometimes, you can basically buy special versions of those from Walmart, and you can use sewing pins, T-pins, kind of whatever you want, and you are going to block out your points. And you don't want it, it's not just here, because this isn't under tension. You want it under tension, and you want to leave it there for several days. Not just to the point it's dry, but basically when you take the pin out, it should retain its shape. There may be a little bit of scrunch back, but the point of blocking is to give it more stability and kind of ensure this is the shape the yarn will be. So obviously you're gonna need to weave in your ends before you finish, but that's not too bad. So if you wanted to block these and get them to be nice pointy stars, you're more than welcome to. That's not what I'm gonna do here. So the next star also has 3 rows. It starts with the same 5 granny cluster center, but the second row is where it gets a little bit different. So I'm going to get my 5 center circle done, and then I'll show you how to do the second. So what I have here is my first row just slip stitched together. And so here's where things change. So I'm going to chain 2 this time and turn my work, and I'm going to do 3 half double crochets. So you start like a normal double crochet, but instead of pulling through twice, you pull through 3 loops at once. And so remember that chain serves as our first one. So we do 2, oops, lost that there. All right, come on, hook. There we go. And we're going to do 1, 2, 3, and then 3 more half double crochets. So technically, since these are not double crochets, this is not a granny cluster. However, you are still doing 3 of them. And just like before, you're going to chain 1. And as my stars keep encroaching on my space, we are going to just do 3 more half double crochets. And so the reason this isn't super different is because I didn't want the layers to be so drastic in size. I kind of wanted there to be a nice gradual decline as you go up the tree to make a really nice slope. I was afraid if it went down immediately to 2 rows, it would be super obvious, which you can see here. That is the size difference between 3 rows and 2 rows versus 3 rows and basically 3 rows, more like 2.5 rows because of the half double crochet. So, you know, these 3 just create a much nicer gradient as far as step size compared to that one. So that's the reason we've got this little intermediate baby. All right, so there's 2. I'm gonna do, oh, I think I did a full double crochet there. That's my problem with half double crochets, is I sometimes lose track of what I'm doing and catch myself doing normal double crochets or single crochets. So just gotta keep an eye on what you're doing to make sure that you're not doing anything crazy. So I'm gonna keep doing my half double crochet clusters all the way around until I get back to my join. So once you get back around, do your last chain 1 and join with your chain, the top of your chain from the previous round. This one has turned and is going to be a little annoying, so I'm just going to go into the back loop of the chain there. It's going to be a little bit easier. Sometimes it looks a little bit different, but I think in this case we'll be just fine. And so here, we're actually going to do the exact same last row as our big one. So we have our basically chain into the join spot, and I'm going to go ahead and do 3 double crochets into the nearest corner. And we will again do 1, 2, 3. Gotta check my sanity sometimes. And then another granny cluster into the same corner. Excuse the other little sounds. I got a lot of trinkets around me. So I got my first granny cluster corner, and again into that chain 1 space. So again, when I say chain 1 space, we are not going into a stitch. The hook is literally just going into the space. You're gonna do a slip stitch and then do a granny cluster in the next corner and keep going all the way around. 2 clusters per corner, slip stitching into the chain 1s and doing 3 chains in between. 2, 3 chains for the corner, slip stitching into the sides. And we're going to go around, and that makes our second layer for the star. You can see we get our little star shape going right there. So I will finish that out and show you what it looks like. So I'm on my last one here, and to join, you could go right here, but to make this just a more solid join, I'm basically going into the turned stitch from the first round, or from the previous round, just somewhere in there, and we're going to slip stitch that closed. It's okay if it's a little messy, it just needs to be closed. So there is our second star, and this yarn has some weird colorations, so there we go right there. So our next star, this is the one that is the actual pattern that I displayed earlier. This is a granny star, and so this is comprised of entirely granny clusters, and there is one difference. This one is only 2 rows, and the other difference is this star is why you would want to have your chain potentially be in the center versus on the edge, because the biggest difference in the second round of this is after you do your cluster, your cluster, you're actually going to slip stitch into the center granny square, kind of from the row below, granny cluster from the row below. So if you start your chain on the outside, when you join, you'll be on the outside and you'll have to do a slip stitch into the center before starting your granny clusters. But if you have your stitch be the center, when you do your slip stitch, you'll already be at the center of the granny cluster and can just go around. If that didn't make any sense, I'm sorry. But again, so if you start with your chain on the outside, you're gonna do 2, do your chain, do 3, 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 do your chain, and you'll slip stitch into the outside. But you need to be in the center to start the next round for this pattern, which is why you'll notice, I'll put the pattern on screen, this one has you start with your chain in the center. So once you make your initial 3 chain, you only do 1 double crochet, then your chain, 3 double crochets, chain, 3 double crochets, chain, 3 double crochets, chain, 3 double crochets, chain, 1 double crochet, and you slip stitch into that initial chain 3. And then you start from the center to just keep going around. So for this star specifically, would definitely recommend starting, and I actually think some of the rest of the ones as well, because this one slip stitches in the center, I believe. Yeah, so basically from here on out, it does kind of matter, and you should start with your chain in the center, and I'll show you what that looks like. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna get started with a magic loop again. I'm just getting myself some yarn here. So we're gonna do a magic loop. Whoop. Here, I'll do that on camera. I find it really, I like doing magic loops. I think they're pretty fun. Ooh, there we go. Whee. So we got 1, 2, 3. And so to start off this time, I'm just going to double crochet 1 before going into my 1, 2, 3. So I technically have 2 stitches here. I have a chain 3 and I have a double crochet. And now I'm going to do a granny cluster. Accidentally yarned over too many times there. So we're gonna go ahead and do a granny cluster, and then our 1, 2, 3, and so forth. Nothing has changed here. You're gonna get 4 clusters going, and I'll show you how to join. Okay, so there's my 4 full clusters. So we're going to pull my loop almost closed, and just make sure that you're still crocheting over both loops for this last one. So you have your chain 3, but you still have to finish off your first cluster. So you're gonna go ahead and do a double crochet. Again, make sure to capture your little tail in there. And so you're gonna finish just like before, and you're going to slip stitch into the top. Woo. There we go. Going to slip stitch into the top chain of the first chain 1 you did that started this whole thing off. And so once you do that, you have your cluster, and you're also now set up perfectly in the middle here. So this join here is basically going to serve as your slip stitch for this next step. And so you're going to directly go into the next corner. You can turn if you want. I don't always turn my work when working in the round or in granny squares. It's honestly personal preference. For this one right now, it literally doesn't change how you work because you're in the center. So if you turned, you'd just be working into this corner and going that way. For a piece that you're going to see more of the full flat of, as in the full face of each one, if you were making like these as per se snowflakes, you'd probably want to turn just so that all of your pieces kind of looked the same and the fronts were all the same, and you didn't turn on some of them and not all of them. But considering these are going to be stacked and you're not really going to see that, I think it's fine. Turn or not, it is entirely your preference. I don't always when working in the round. Sometimes I find it easier. Sometimes I find it looks nicer if I do. So I say do whatever floats your boat. It's your little Christmas tree, and we're here to make happy little trees. So you got your granny corner, and so you're going to go into that middle stitch, do a slip stitch, and remember to yarn over because you're doing double crochets, and just go right on ahead and do your double crochets. You've got your 1 granny cluster. Every corner is made up of 2. So you're going to do your chain 1, 2, 3, and do your second cluster right into the same corner. So this one you can really clearly see this star shaped starting to take form, and go into that middle stitch and go around like that. And again, you'll just slip stitch in that same spot to join, and you'll have your star. While I'm finishing this piece up, I do want to say, keep in mind your tension. If you tend to crochet really tight, then keep it consistent throughout, because if you're really tight on the big ones and then really loose on the small ones, they straight up could end up the same size, just because of how, you know, tension works and yarn and all of that. So try to keep an even tension as you are crocheting each separate piece. I know it can be easy to kind of stay consistent over like one large piece. I tend to have trouble in my tension consistency when I'm doing a bunch of little tiny pieces, which is of course what this is. So that's just something to keep in mind and keep an eye out for. So if you know you tend to crochet smaller things really tightly, maybe size up a hook. If you know you tend to crochet smaller things really loosely, go down a hook. You know, figure out what works best for you. If you have issues counting stitches when you don't turn it, turn it. If you have issue counting stitches when you do turn it, don't turn it. I think this is a kind of a fun project to mess around with a lot of things. It's super variable. I mean, you could do a 6-pointed star by just starting with an additional cluster at the base. Like, it's really not that big of a deal. It's a super modifiable pattern, and I totally think it's something you should try out. Because you could make a little garland out of these stars. Like, you could do so many different things. Use this as an inspiration and go make something fun and festive. So we are at my last cluster here. There is my last double crochet, and so into that stitch where we started, we're going to go ahead and do a slip stitch, chain, and cut that off. And there is our next star. Some of these look a little bit bigger because I haven't kind of pulled that center, but there is our star. So we have officially done half of the patterns. Technically, if you are making this for yourself, you need to make sure you do 2 of each of these. But those are all the big ones. These last ones take so much less time because they're so much smaller. Surprisingly, no, this is 1 row. These 2 are both 2 rows. This is 1 row all the way around. And this, again, technically a star, is 1 row, and I swear this is actually crocheted. It just doesn't look like it. So we're gonna go ahead and get started with our next one. This one starts with another graining cluster of 5 on the base, and then the second row for these are single crochets, and I believe 2, looks like I only chained 2 there, because again, nothing's going into them, so I just needed a little boop. We're going to slip stitch into the middle of each cluster, and you're going to do 3 single crochets all the way around. So they get easier and easier because they get smaller and smaller. So again, start with your graining cluster of 5, and I'll get that set up for me, and I'll show you how we do the second row. So I'm just finishing up the join for my first round, and again, that's basically going to serve as our slip stitch. So we're just going to go straight into our single crochets. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, and then 1, 2. Again, I didn't write these patterns down, so I'm kind of trying to remember them as I go. For the most part, I've done okay. And then we're going to go ahead and do a 1, 2, 3 into the same corner, and then slip stitch into that middle stitch, and just keep going. So yeah, these stars are super quick and super simple. And the good news is, since you need multiple, you know, you can kind of just keep crocheting them until they look right, and then just mix the good looking stars with the bad looking stars, and then the tree just kind of looks fun and funky, and no one has to be the wiser that half of the stars aren't technically what they're supposed to be. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. And so here we are on our last little bit. 2, 3, 1, 2, and then a 1, 2, and 3. And so again, we're gonna go into somewhere near-ish where we think that first stitch came from. It doesn't have to be perfect. And we're going to slip stitch and chain to finish, cut that free, and immediately suspect that I do believe I did this with a smaller hook. So, okay, so I'm gonna switch to that from now on, but this pattern, this level of star, I'll put, hopefully I put a graphic on at the beginning. I would switch down a hook size or two. This is the next smallest hook I have. I don't have like a 4.5 or a 4.75. I don't know if those are things that exist. But this is an 8 or a 5, and this is a 6 or a 4.25. So I went down 2 hook sizes, if we assume 7 is the middle. But I would go down at least 1 hook size for the smaller stars to kind of even further kind of reinforce that size difference, because I think this one looks better than this one, and this is the one I just did. So we're gonna pretend he didn't happen. And you know, if you go down a hook size, you can see just in the granny squares, if we put those side by side, that these ones are ever so slightly taller than these ones, and these ones are ever so slightly puffier than these ones. So that's kind of your difference. It's super minute and minuscule, but it can make a difference over time. So do the last 3 stars with a slightly smaller hook size, and let's get on to our second smallest. So this second smallest star, the only difference it has from this one is its base is half double crochets, not double crochets. So other than that, it's almost the exact same pattern. It is half double crochets, and instead of 3 single crochets, it's only 2 on each side up here. I wasn't able to get more to fit. It just started getting really, really tight and complicated. So instead of doing double crochets for your base, you're gonna do the same structure, your same little start in the center structure. You're just gonna do it with half double crochets instead of double crochets. It'll just make the center inside that much smaller. You can see that the center points, you know, kind of here, if we line our centers up just about, that this, yes, it has the chain 1, but this is essentially the height of the double crochet. You're gonna do these as half double crochets. So let's get started with that. For your half double crochet start, you're only going to chain 2 instead of 3. Otherwise, basically, you're just gonna go around exactly the same. I'm wondering if I'd only chained 2 there instead of 3, so we'll go with it. You're also going to only chain 2 on the corners instead of 3. But otherwise, we're gonna go around and we're just gonna do half double crochets as our little clusters. And so I'll come back and show you when I get those done. So, and I'll take this moment to say that if you do the center of this star, you have this one done. That is all this one is 3 half double crochet clusters with chains on the corner and slip stitch finished. So we have our clusters here. I've got 1 more to do after my chains to finish it out. And I only did 2 chains. It might be 3 to get the nicer corners on this one. But the number of chains I think is honestly kind of inconsequential, as long as you get the general shape right and you can mess with it. Maybe you like the more blunt edges, maybe you like the more pointy edges. But before, oh my goodness, and this is the problem with downsizing a hook, is it does get really finicky to kind of get through things. But that is your final star. So if you can do the center to this guy, you have this one. So basically, I'm not going to include a separate pattern for the center of this. You just 3 half double crochets, give them chains on the corners, and you have your little top star. So to turn it into this one, you are going to immediately just go into the nearest corner once you've joined and do 2 single crochets, chain 2, 2, wow, single crochets, slip stitch into the center and keep going. 2 single crochets. If you can fight the yarn, fight the power, and give me 2 chains and then 2 single crochets. Woo. So if you find at any point, you know, you do this for yourself, that there is a pattern of stitches you like more, or you think there's a better or prettier way to achieve a different size of star, go for it. This was kind of created of me messing with the pattern and knowing that different stitches have different heights, kind of inherently. Single crochet, half double crochet, treble crochet. That's kind of the steps up as far as size. So if you think that, you know, you wanted to make a bigger star and you wanted to use treble crochet for part of it, go for it. If you think some of the middle ones should have half double crochets subbed out for some of the double crochets, or vice versa, go for it. As soon as you kind of understand the basic pattern of stitch sizes, you can do whatever you want, especially when it comes to something that has a really basic form like a star. All of my stars just kind of keep slowly getting into frame. It's kind of funny. As soon as you kind of understand the basic form of the star, which is 5 end corners, you can do whatever you want with it. It's a super versatile form. It's a super simple form. And I think something like this, if you're not used to, you know, what's called like freeform crochet or making your own patterns, kind of taking a really basic form like a star or a granny square and messing with it and seeing kind of what different sizes you can make, height variation, stuff like that, is a great way to understand how you can sculpture and form things with crochet. So we're gonna, again, center-ish, doesn't really matter, not to me anyways, it might to you, and I'm sorry. Slip stitch that off, cut a halfway decent, oh lord, tail. These scissors are not good. Finish that off, and you have your stars. So I have to crochet one more so that I can have my little top star there. Again, you'll need 2 of every single star presented here, but let me show you how I put it together in a cute little stack. So if you want to use tinsely the yarn like me, you can literally just crochet a blob, it doesn't matter. But in reality, what this is single crochets and then chains 5 times to make the chains be the 5 points of the star, just kind of like how these are, but at obviously like the crochet points of this, like it's really tiny. Like I made this star, there's its little points, very small, you can just kind of barely see them. So this is literally just single crochet, chain 2, single crochet, chain 2, single crochet, chain, and then you attempt to slip stitch it. If you're going to use a ball fuzzy yarn like me, it doesn't matter really, because can you see the star? Not really. But otherwise just make an even smaller star. That's about what I did there. As far as putting it together, so I have a little disc of cardboard and a chopstick. And so this chopstick is far taller. I have my tree kind of stacked here. It's a little compressed right now. This chopstick is obviously far taller than it needs to be. That's okay. I'm just going to cut it at whatever the appropriate length is. I'm going to cut it just, you know, to hit that height so I can then glue my little star on top. So first things first, I got my hot glue gun heating up. I'm going to get this cut off and then glued vertically onto the base so it's nice and stable, and then we'll start stacking. So I just hot glued the base together. This is a chopstick that I sawed the top off of, and once I had the base initial center kind of secured, I just put hot glue up the sides and onto the base to make sure there was a lot of glue and that it would be secure. All right, once you've got your center kind of in place, try to keep it as straight and center as possible, meaning probably don't manipulate it until it's fully cooled and set. But the next thing you get to think about is whether or not you want your layers to be flat against the bottom or levitating up off the ground a little bit. I do think that's probably going to play into whether you decided to block these or not. And it's kind of fun when I put this on right now, just due to the wood, it actually kind of levitates a little bit, which I don't think is too bad. But basically from here on out, you're just gonna glue these in place and make sure you get the order right and that they sit about where you want. So we're gonna go ahead and get them glued up. I'm going to put a glue ring slightly above where I actually want my piece to sit, so that way it'll slide down and rest kind of in and on that glue ring, and I think that's gonna work pretty well. So we've got our glue there. We're gonna go ahead and slide her on down. Just a little bit more, get it right about where I want. I'm basically gonna let each layer cool because I want to make sure they get a chance to cool and set, and I'm going to secure it again with another little ring of glue on top just to make sure it's nice and secure, because we are using hot glue, everyone's least favorite glue. Woo! So I don't think that'll affect the layering or the stacking too much. But yeah, it's going from the bottom up. We're just gonna stack them up. And the bottom one needs to be the most secure because pretty much everything else is gonna rest on top of it. So you just need to make sure the bottom is gonna stay, you know, really where you want it. And so with the nature of the bottom, before you put the rest of them on, I think I'm gonna go ahead and just give it a little more glue in there. Make sure it's really on my base nice and securely. A little more glue never hurt anyone. And if it's messy, again, that's okay. This is the bottom of the tree. If anyone looks that closely at the bottom of the tree, you can just tell them that they aren't appreciating the craftsmanship that went into it. Oh my God, there's so much hair. Try not to glue your own or your pet's hair into the piece. If it's already crocheted into it, well, then you may be a little stuck. Try to eliminate some of the fuzzies. But yeah, you just want that bottom one to be as secure as possible. And then glue and stack them up.
Once my base layer was stable, I went through and glued on each individual layer. I did a bead of hot glue just above where I thought the final layer would sit, so that when I slid the star down, it would pass through the glue and then kind of be stuck to the stick. And then once the layer was on, I did another little ring on top. So I just repeated this, little glue above, slide the layer down, a little bit more glue on top, until I got all of the layers on the Christmas tree. I did this to kind of make sure that they would stay in place and be stable and not move. Luckily, the fibers of the yarn absorb a lot of glue. So I think this worked really, really well. You could always use stronger glue if you want, but hot glue worked perfectly fine.
So I just finished stacking it. And I think it looks adorable, and the little ball on top is freaking adorable. And I just had a brilliant idea of, you know, since I make jewelry, I have a bunch of perfectly little circular beads, and so I think I want to fashion a bunch of beads to it to kind of be like little ornaments on the Christmas tree. I have some purple ones. I've got a lot of, you know, white and clear ones as well that I think could be really cute. I'll dig around and see if I have any others, but I think these might be what I stick with. If I had some gold, I have some little tiny ones. That might be fun. I've got all sorts of different kinds of shapes of things. I've got like your normal little seed beads, and I've got a bunch of other gold pieces. I've got little circular discs. I've got these little chevrons. So I might come up with some stuff, but I think I'm going to put together some little bead pieces, and I'm going to use kind of typical earring rod pieces, probably that have a little loop at the end, to put everything together, and then I'm going to probably use a needle and thread to sew it onto the tree. But first things first, I gotta plan out what I want to put on, and then I'll show you how I. So I just made the cutest little bead garland. It wraps around the tree 3-ish times, and so I'm gonna just secure it with hot glue. I'm gonna tuck it up underneath the first layer right there, and then wrap it around, and then wherever it ends, I'm going to just tuck it up underneath and hot glue it there. So I'm going to get that situated and in place before I figure out where I want to add some baubles. So the tree is done. I decided against using jewelry pieces to put the beads on, instead choosing to literally use a needle and thread and thread it on and just tie it at knots. I may use a little glue to just kind of secure them a little bit more onto each point, but I used a mix of silver and these white to kind of go with the garland I had there. I didn't want to cover it in too many, but I think this is absolutely adorable. The gold ties in the gold from the big star. The silver and white just kind of keeps the wintry fall vibe. Wintry fall, that's a word. Wintry cool ice vibe is what I should say. There's some little hot glue strands all over the place. I may see if I have like felt or a fabric to wrap this base in, so it's not quite just cardboard. You know, even black I think would be better than what it is. But yeah, we have a finished little Christmas tree, and it's really freaking cute. So this is my present for my mom. I think I said in the intro that if my mother is watching this, that she should stop watching this if it happens to be before Christmas. So if it's before Christmas and you're my mom, you've spoiled your Christmas present. Otherwise, maybe you'll make this for yourself or give it as a gift to someone that you love. Let me know what you think of it in the comments down below. And otherwise, you know, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy New Year, all that good stuff. Whatever you celebrate, however you celebrate, I hope you have a wonderful time. And yeah, I will see you in the new year.